Now we're going to take a look at one of my favorite features of Photoshop CS3, and that is the vanishing point filter. Now, if you're used to Photoshop CS2, you know that vanishing point is a very powerful tool that you can do lots of magical things with here inside of this two-dimensional world that we live in Photoshop. You can actually start to create a mock 3D environment by creating lots of little different grids and planes and do some really interesting effects. So let's go ahead now and jump into the vanishing point filter by coming up to the filter menu, and we'll choose vanishing point. Once I do that, it's going to launch up almost like a separate application, and you'll see here that it has its own image window where you can preview and work with all of your changes here. You also have on the left-hand side a toolbar which contains its own set of tools. You've got the Create Plane tool, you've got the Marquee tool, the Stamp tool, you've also got Brush tools, Transform tools, you've got an eyedropper, a ruler, the hand tool, and the zoom tool. So all of those are at your disposal over here on the left-hand side to use and work at your leisure inside of Vanishing Point. Also here you have the ability to change your grid size and this new feature where you can actually adjust the angle of the planes and grids that you're creating here inside of Vanishing Point. This is a very new and exciting feature right up here, and we're going to be seeing how that works in a future lesson. So let's go ahead now and take a look at how to start creating our first plane here inside of Vanishing Point. And I do that simply by selecting this Create Plane tool or by hitting the C key on my keyboard to instantly invoke that tool. And what I'm going to do is just bring this little crosshair into the image window, and you'll notice that I can zoom in on the specific point that I'm viewing right now simply by holding down the X key on my keyboard. So I can zoom in at 200% magnification to get a real close-in view right there on that area that I want to start creating this plane. Now to start creating planes, all you do is simply click once. You don't have to hold down anything, you just click and then move your mouse to the next point you want to map into your new grid. Go ahead and click again, and we'll just continue creating this plane. So essentially I'm just outlining this green box in this frame here, and I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to complete it by clicking down here in the bottom left hand corner. Now once I do that, you'll notice that I get this blue grid, and I zoomed out there simply by letting go of the X key. Now, I have this blue grid here on my screen. This means that I've created a nice plane. Vanishing Point likes this plane. It's very happy with it. If I had messed up and created a plane that Vanishing Point didn't like, it would first tell me it didn't like it by turning yellow. So let me try to get sort of a yellow color here. There was one right there. You'll notice there when it turns yellow, that means that your plane is okay. Vanishing Point can live with it, but it's really not the best plane in the world. So another thing that you need to be aware of, that if you create a plane that's just not going to work at all, Vanishing Point's going to pop up and say, I'm not really going to let you do that. We're going to go ahead and create one of those planes now by moving this in, and you'll notice when I do that, that my plane should go red, and there you go. You don't even get grid lines inside of there. You just get that big bold red outline, and that means I'm not going to create a plane for you at all because this is just totally not in perspective and it's not going to work. So you need to, when you're drawing out your planes, be sure that you maintain that blue color. Now you can live with yellow, but why would you want to? You can always tweak these corners and handles and things to create perfect planes here inside of Vanishing Point. So I always recommend that you leave your grid set to blue. So let's go ahead now and move these points back until we get a blue grid. So I'm going to move this back, and I'll hit the X key on my keyboard again to zoom in so I can see exactly where I need to go here. And I'm going to pan around this image by holding down the spacebar key. That's going to let me turn instantly to the hand tool here and pan around the image simply by clicking and dragging around. Now I'll let go of the spacebar key so I can continue editing, and I'll just click and drag this point so that it matches back with that corner, and I'll click and drag this point so that it matches back with that corner. And we'll do the same for this top corner as well. Now if I've done my job correctly here, this should be a perfectly blue plane. And as you can see, it is truly a blue plane. And if I zoom out, you can see here we've created a nice plane right along this green square here. But what I want to do is I want to encompass the entire wall. So how do I translate this one square to map to this entire wall? In order to do that, all you got to do is come up here and click and drag these handles out. So I'll click and drag this handle to extend up past the top of the wall there. I'll click and drag this handle to extend past the wall there as well, and we will drag this one down until it meets the floor. and we will drag this one in until it meets the crease of the wall like so. Now you'll notice that I'm not encompassing that whole corner up here, so what I need to do now is zoom out. I can do that simply by hitting Control- on PC, Command- on the Mac, and then I'll go ahead and I'll extend that right on up like that, and I've created a nice plane that corresponds to this whole entire wall here on the left-hand side. So now that we've created our first plane, we'll be able to accurately create our second plane. So in order to create a secondary plane based on this first plane, go ahead and hold down the Control key on PC, the Command key on Mac, and then just click and drag out that new plane from your center point, and it should create a nice new plane directly perpendicular to the plane you created first. Now, you'll notice here it doesn't quite match up with that floor there, and that's where this angle button comes in handy up here. Now, you'll notice that you automatically get this little scrubby slider when you mouse over the word angle, and so you can just take this and you can scrub it backwards and forwards to swing that plane in and out. So you can adjust this to any angle under the sun. Anything you want to do with this plane, you can do so simply by clicking and dragging that little angle slider right there. Now I'm going to back this up and make sure that it aligns perfectly with that bottom part of the wall, and I can actually zoom in up to 200% like I was talking about earlier to make sure that it's straight against that wall there. I'll zoom back out and I'll actually expand this out just a little bit more so it encompasses that entire wall. And so now we've created a complete set of planes here for both of these walls, and we're ready to start mapping some images in here. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and click OK. And once I do that, you'll notice that there's no visible change to my Photoshop document. That's because those planes are saved inside the document, but they're not visible. I didn't export them to a layer. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later on, but for now, let's just talk about the planes that we just created. Those are going to be saved no matter what type of image you have. So whether you have a TIFF, a JPEG, a PSD file, any kind of file you have, that plane is always going to be saved parametrically in the data of this file. So anytime you open that file back up inside of Photoshop, and go to the vanishing point filter, you'll be able to see those planes you created for the lifetime of this file. So that in and of itself is a great feature to have. So we've created two perfect planes here on these walls, and in the next lesson we'll take a look at how to import images in here and start to work with the new vanishing point.